enjoyed it.
Me too.
It's just one of those things where like there's a spark. So I'm really glad
Cool.
I'm really glad to hear that.
Okay. Will you hit start? Well, I need to unmute myself, and then.
Yeah, I just put you live.
Molly, you're amazing and beautiful, and
Yeah,
don't
we're
stress,
live.
it's
My
all
husband
good.
just.
And we can't hear you.
You're
my
live.
friend.
I can't. I know you can't hear me. Trent won't unmute me. Give me the
My
thing
friend,
back.
we cannot
Oh,
hear
I'm
you.
sorry. I was too busy fixing your problem.
I don't think she wants us to hear it. I don't know.
No.
Oh.
Keep going.
Oh,
Oh,
just
talking.
keep talking. Keep
Ah,
talking.
Keep talking.
Keep talking.
Great.
Okie dokie.
My gosh, I can't wait to read this.
Well,
story.
here's the great news. We are finally live. My husband hit the go live button without unmuting me to tell you guys that we're live. About
Cool.
15, 20 seconds ago.
Okay, good. None of the other stuff
Yeah.
was talked about. Okay, good. Woo! Woo!
That was a major catastrophe. Catastrophe is a strong word for a podcast that you're streaming to YouTube. But great job from husband for helping make sure the audio was right. I will fix some stuff in post here because right now on our channel there looks like there's 2 videos. I'm gonna fix it. Don't you worry. It's gonna get fixed.
I never worry.
And with that, it's
I'm glad you
October,
don't.
and we get to talk about Edgar Allan Poe, and I am super, super excited.
Me
Right?
too. Me too.
Sarah,
But maybe
what else
let's
are we
start
gonna
off with saying who we are.
Who we are. Yeah.
I'm Molly.
I'm Teresa.
I'm
Morgan.
Sarah.
Oh, my lord.
And to our credit, this is our 3rd time doing this, so it's all good. It all works out. We are the semi-sages of the pages,
Woo!
and we are talking Culture Club tonight. This is alternating with our regular episodes, which is on our regular podcast. And tonight we are talking, and as we do with Culture Club, we are talking about what's happening in the world around us. And as Morgan was saying, we are in the haunted season, the spooky season. So what better thing to talk about than Edgar Allan Poe?
Yay!
And when we're done with Poe, we're going to get to read some first pages and critique them and analyze, even, how could they even be better. But there's some really great selections this week and some younger authors, which is really exciting for us, I think. So, what's everybody's favorite Poe selection? Like, what's your favorite?
Oh, that's a good question.
For me, go ahead. Go ahead, Sarah.
For those who may not be familiar with Edgar Allan Poe, let's chat a little bit about who he was, why he matters, why we're talking about him. Aside from it's spooky season, let's think about why we talk about this master of horror, the short story king, and the father of detective stories as we know it. This guy was around in the 1800s, early to mid 1800s, and he's had a very mysterious legacy left behind him, just like his stories are covered with mystique. It was long believed that he was an alcoholic and he suffered from raging bouts of anger, but we're seeing more and more from modern biographies that they actually think that was really dramatized and that he wasn't the sort of lunatic figure that we look back on him as. So it's been really interesting to read up on this gentleman. He had an extraordinarily odd upbringing. His natural parents both passed away. One was of tuberculosis. They think his father passed away under mysterious circumstances after he'd abandoned his mother. It's just a very odd, dark, horror-y beginning. And he was adopted by a couple where he got the name Allan. So Edgar Allan Poe came from the from his unofficial adoption. And his adopted mother loved him, adored him. And for the majority of his life, his adopted father loved him too, until he went to college and racked up the modern equivalent of $50,000 in debt just by gambling.
Ooh.
So his dad was like,
Oops.
nope, cutting loose, you messed up, I'm not going to help you anymore. So Poe kind of thought he was abandoned by his father, his new father, he called him Pa, and went on to join the military, ended up going to West Point, and he decided during that time that he wanted to be a writer, that he wanted to pursue that. So he asked his dad to give him a letter for an honorable discharge, because that was how it was done West Point in those times. And his dad was like, haha, cool joke. No, you're still cut off. You're gonna finish what you started. So Poe was like, haha, cool joke. And then racked up over 100 misdemeanors so that he was discharged because Hims was a rebel and he became a rebellious writer as he went along. He had some weird Freudian issues going on. I mean, he ended up marrying a woman who was 14 when he was 26.
Oh.
Even in the Victorian era, they're like, this is kind of cringy, dude. Like, they weren't about it. And so it was weird for those times. It's far weirder now. It's very legal now. And so when we look back at his works, we see sort of this weird string of older women being sort of idolized a lot of times. And there's even one story where the narrator's wife dies and she has a daughter, and he doesn't name the daughter until she's 10 years old, and he gives her his dead wife's name, and then she dies. And he says, I put the dead one in the grave and did not see the first one there. And it's just, there's weird hauntings of his Freudian issues scattered throughout his writing. Likewise, we see some incest things come about in his writing as well, because he had, they couldn't prove like a physical affair, but he was involved with his first cousin, which still at that time, they're like, this is weird. Like, this is weird. So these are very interesting themes that we see throughout our boy Edgar Allan Poe's writing, but he's lasted, he's endured, even though he didn't have any kind of fame when he was around, except for being a jerk as a critic, because he was one of the harshest critics around. So indeed, he is someone who lives in infamy and someone we still study today.
I have a question for you, Sarah. Is it true that he died under kind of weird, mysterious circumstances?
Yeah, he did. He was in Baltimore and he went missing for, I think, 6 days. And this was where like the weirdness came about, because there was some sort of weird political kidnapping going on at that time where they would get somebody drunk, knock them out, and then vote in their name. And it's like, can you just vote in their name anyway? This seems like extra steps. But they think he might have been a victim of that, where he was knocked over the head. And there were later reports that when they moved him post-mortem, they heard kind of a rattling in his skull. And a part of me is like, how aggressively were you guys moving this dead guy that you've heard a rattling in his skull? But they think that there might have been a calcified tumor in his head. So if he'd had brain cancer, which this is very modern science looking at this, if he had had a brain tumor, they think that maybe if he was hit over the head, it might have dislodged that tumor and caused the brain swelling that killed him, because he was really in an odd state when he was found. He was found in like a gutter, and he was cognizant. He was talking, but he was like slurring. He wasn't making sense. He kept asking for some guy, and they're like, what is wrong with you? And so because of the slurring at that time, they assumed, oh, this guy's just drunk and he's just, he'll sleep it off. He'll be fine at some point. And he died. He died at 40. So it was a lot of weirdness going on. And the guy who published his obituary was actually his bitter rival.
Oh, wow.
So that added to like the negativity around him. And that was a big part of how until like really recently thought of him as just this drunkard because of the obituary that came out.
It's fascinating.
So slight sidetrack. Morgan turned me onto this this book. There is a young adult book called Nevermore, which it's young adult. It's fantasy essentially, and it actually like is based on and inspired by Poe, and inspired by like the odd circumstances around his death, and like trying to rationalize that and stuff like that. I will say, slight departure, it looks like in spirit of spooky season, we have 2 black cats on the screen. Yeah, a little tail there. So this, for those who haven't seen him, this is Toby.
Aw,
Toby has,
Toby.
yeah, he's got a shaved belly right now because he got an ultrasound. But he's fine. This is Toby.
Aw.
And this is Winchester. Yes, he's named after the brothers in Supernatural. So kill me.
I won't.
and then resurrect you.
Right? Yeah, I'll go to hell. I'll be resurrected. We'll do that a bunch of seasons.
Yeah, 'cause
Yeah.
that's the point.
I mean, well, and that's a theme in Poe: death and
Mm-hmm.
resurrection, or
That's
not being
happening.
resurrected. Yeah.
Being forgotten after you're dead, losing identity after you're dead.
Yeah.
He was fairly obsessed with it, but he was also surrounded by it. So it makes sense that he was trying to grapple with it
But
in a
wasn't that
literary way.
but that was in many ways the Victorian era, and the movements from rural into London, when they didn't design that city very well, and they didn't understand about a lot of medical stuff. They would dig their wells right next to privies, and then be like, why is everyone in the house so sick? Which they would never do out rurally, out in farmlands. They knew better. Or they just had more land, and it just didn't happen that way.
Right, even location, like you're saying about houses and pumping it literally sewage into the backyards, right? Becomes a huge.
Yeah.
So the tuberculosis outlook for just such a huge part.
We talked about this when we talked about the Bronte sisters and how their town was incredibly sick all the time, and it took a while for them to figure out that basically they were in the bodies were on the top of the hill, and when it rained, the decomposing bodies would get into the water source of the town.
Boy, talk about a horror story.
Yeah, talk about a horror story. As far as we know, that didn't happen to Poe, but yeah, sanitation in the past. That's the real horror story.
Right, and clean water sources. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, I was fascinated also in terms of because Edgar Allan Poe is one of the quintessential American authors, right? We have Poe, we have Twain,
Still,
Emerson, Whitman.
yeah, Emily. I don't know. Yeah, there are some, and so he falls into this very I guess what's his face? Grapes of Wrath. Steinbeck. You probably put Steinbeck in there. But these very classic American writers, of which maybe aren't. It's not a huge category, right? It's not a huge category. So why do we think? And maybe this is coming off with Sarah's why do we think he stuck? Why do you think it still resonates with people?
well, I think a big part of why he became famous postmortem and then why we continue to read him is that he had two rules which didn't really exist before him. And the rules were everything he wrote had to be able to be read within one sitting. So that's why he's kind of the master of short stories, because he wanted high tension stories. Because at this time, if you look at the other books, any of the other classical books at that time are books. They are very beefy, and that might not have been really appealing to the American public as they were starting to become more and more literate. They wanted fast reads, just like how we want our fast reads today. He's someone that we can read a ton of in a very short period of time. He also believed in this concept of having every word add to the story somehow, which is also that short story mentality where there's no fluff. Even though when you do read Edgar Allan Poe, you're like, okay, 40 of these words could have been cut, Poe. Come on. And it's just at that time, no one was doing that. So even though he has these extraordinary images that he uses that use all the senses that really throw us into the House of Usher or, right alongside with Annabelle Lee waiting for her on the cliffs, it's done in such a way to where it's told with high tension. And it doesn't matter if you're an 8th grader or us as adults, there's something that calls to us. And I think it is his sorrow that calls to us, that appeals to us, because we've all lost somebody. And so I think we identify with him, even though we're I'm not going to sleep with the cousins, man. No. There's something poetic to him. I mean, he wrote dozens of poems.
Pun intended.
In addition to the macabre elements of horror and making it a genre that, really, other than Frankenstein and Dracula hadn't really splashed onto the scene, right? So he brings a macabre poetic element to it, not just in the size, its digestibility, but also he dances with the surreal too, because this is done in Frankenstein, but certainly not to the degree that Poe does it, where we're dealing now with unreliable narrators. And we're dealing with them and what is actually real and what is not. And my favorite poem of all time is written by Edgar Allan Poe, and it's called A Dream Within a Dream. And I think it encapsulates all of his work, which is that as he's watching his wife that he loves die and he's kissing her goodbye, everything that he's experienced feels like a dream. This moment feels like a dream. The future feels like a dream. And so he's bringing an existential crisis into his work through death. So he's also asking us to ask questions about, what do we really know about existence? Not just what do we know about death, which has been done a lot historically, but what do we really know about life and its juxtaposition to death and what we're actually experiencing? And every single piece of his work, in addition to the ones that you mentioned, but especially you see it in Cask of Amontillado, which is one of the reasons that it's required reading. You see that because like Dream Within a Dream, Black Cat does it, Portrait does it. So all of those kind of double down. Highwayman does it with the ribbon in her hair, as it is a symbol of life, death, and travel, like wrapping the ribbon around. So he's taking these symbols that are both representative of death, but then he's weaving them into life in a way that has us question what our life is worth and what we actually can believe in life. And I think that's what makes his work so powerful, is he's not just working in one genre. In some senses, I would argue he's bringing philosophical existentialism, into his work.
Well, the one thing that I this is gonna sound like really maybe dark, but one thing that I really like is exactly what you're saying. Is you read it and I get the sense of on many of the things is you can't escape your past.
Mm-hmm.
You can't escape your own mortality. You can't escape death. It doesn't matter. Sorry?
Your mind.
Right.
Well, I was going to go with what Red Mask. It doesn't matter if you have a lot of money. It doesn't matter what you do. Those things are always going to come for you. And oftentimes in his works, they come in the form of sound. Whether it's the sound of the heart, right? The telltale heart. In the Raven, it's the rapping on the door followed by the Raven saying nevermore. In the Cask, it's the chains. And then there's the bells in the Red Mask of Death, for example. And it's kind of like a dark message if you think about it that way. It doesn't matter what you do, death is coming. It doesn't matter what you do, you can't escape the dark deeds that you have done. They're always going to find you, they're going to come for you. But on the other hand, it's kind of, empowering, freeing that, no one can escape the fate. It doesn't matter if you're wealthy, it doesn't matter if you're powerful or rich, we're all going to end up the same. So what really matters with what you're doing with your time, right? Are you falling in love? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Because, you can't outrun it. So you might as well run towards it. You might as well enjoy it. You might as well live life. So maybe that's a dark but twisted message.
The political theorists of his time, their big things were that we're all equal before the law, and that there's no such thing as divine rights, because no one talks to God. So we're all equal in our ignorance of God. Because unless you have a mental disorder, you're probably not seeing God in your living room, right? So because we're all equal, right? Because we're all equal in our ignorance. But then I like what you're saying, because he's making the same point, right? We're all equal. We're all equally destined for the same end. That was really well said.
Yeah, so if you need to write an essay on Poe, listen to us. Give you some ideas.
Right. You guys are awesome. I just learned so much. I love it.
Should we analyze some first pages, or do we have any other?
Any more takeaways?
Yeah, we've got a couple of listeners. Sorry, I've got multiple monitors, so when you see me like looking around weird, it's not that I don't like you listeners. It's that I'm looking at the other screen, checking our monitors, seeing what's up. We do have some current listeners, so I don't know if they have any questions about Poe that they want to ask us.
That'd be awesome.
Right now, just some people saying hi, so hello back.
Hello.
Morgan, it looks like maybe one of your students.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
maybe we can start on the first pages, and if you guys
Love
have
it.
any questions about Poe, you want us to answer live, type it in, and we'll make up an answer.
I hope we're not going to make up an. All right. Do we want to start? Do you want me to start us off?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
yours is really good.
All right. So we're going to start off here with Mr. Baker. Oh, yes, ma'am.
So, I wanted to remind people of the quick rules of
Yeah.
these.
Thank you.
Quick rules are we're giving critiques of first pages. It is never meant to bash anyone or make anyone feel bad, but always an even better if scenario. So that's how we're analyzing these pages. Even better if. We're anonymizing things.
Yes.
So, we're
But
not
if
going
you
to say
hear
anything.
your work, if you're listening and it's your work and you like tell us and you want to tell people,
That's fine.
absolutely.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But we're not going to out you. So,
Right.
did I miss anything? But yeah, these should be kind of horror, mystery, genre-ish, right? That's what we got today.
They're all
Yep.
horror
Horror.
Yep.
I'm excited. I haven't
With
read
the Poe-
these.
with a Poe style, with this Poe influence.
I'm excited. All right. Sorry to
That'd be
cut you
fun.
up, Teresa.
No, you're totally fine. So the title of this work is Mr. Baker, which is a good call out here. Okay, here we go. I love the way this one started. It's been 2 days since I've been arrested for the murder of Mr. Baker. I've been thinking about how to get out of this place. But first, let me tell you how I got here. My name is Matthew. I lived with Mr. Baker for a while. He was my roommate, and Mr. Baker was a very mean old man. He would yell at me sometimes if things didn't go his way. And this one day, I got so fed up with his yelling that one night, very quietly, I opened his door and had a knife with me. I was very quiet when I came up to his bed and stab, 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 Mr. Baker is dead. I had to hide his body somewhere because I just remembered that his family was coming over tomorrow. So I have to be quick. And I thought fast. I could hide his body in the floor. So I dug a hole in the floor and I chopped up Mr. Baker and I put him in the floor of the house. The next day, his family showed up and they were so excited to see Mr. Baker because they hadn't seen him in a long time. The family knocked on the door. I answered. The grandkids were at the door and they said, "Hi, Grand. You're not my grandpa." And I said, "No, sorry, your grandpa is not home." And Mr. Baker's daughter said, "What do you mean he's not at home?" I said, "He left yesterday night. I have no clue where he went." And she said, "Well, that's funny because he said he would be home all day and all night. Do you mind me coming inside?" And I said, "No." Long story short, we talked about where he could have gone, the kids playing right above where I dug Mr. Baker's body into the floor. I don't know what happened, but a floorboard got loose and the body got exposed. And the kids came screaming into the room saying there's a body in the floor. The rest is history, and that's why I'm here.
Very telltale heart.
Yeah.
I need to be an audiobook narrator.
Yeah, that was incredible. So what are our three really big compliments that we liked about the story?
That was a great hook. It brought us right in.
Yeah, the voice is relatable, right? And you feel like they're talking with you.
Yeah, easy to read, easy to understand. I love the deliberate use of repetition. Also very Poe. I think it was quickly, stab, stab, stab. That kind of thing. I appreciate that. It was good use of repetition.
And I liked how it was very clear. It had a start and it had an end and it had an arc and it was all very, very well done. That was nice.
Good beginning, middle, end. And it didn't. It paid off. It all stayed in the horror genre. Like it all there wasn't a weird like romance scene or fantasy in the middle of it. Like it was true to its genre, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was
Also-
good.
I also like how short as it is, we had dialogue, and I really appreciated that. I don't think that dialogue's used enough in Tiny Tales. I know we're looking for first page, but this was a complete story. This book could continue to go on, absolutely. So I like that we had so much packed into such a tiny spot.
So what can we do to make it better? Even better if
Even better.
For me, even better if slightly tighter. So there was, for example, like this is what I mean, really, really good, but there were occasional places where I would maybe look at the sentences and maybe shorten up the sentences, maybe get rid of some extra words so that you increase tension and you drive the reader just a little bit faster through. So for example, I really liked how they did quickly. I noticed at one point in time I was reading and it said very quickly. I don't know that I need the very, right? Quickly is already quickly. So just really, really small things I think could like take this good story and like push it to the next level on kind of just driving the tension and driving the pace, just a little bit on those small areas.
Agreed. I would like a little bit more description in it. Just a touch. You know, floorboards creaking. You know, the maybe the door opening up the door is creaky. Am I muted?
No, a smell.
Oh,
Does
a
the
smell.
body
Yeah,
smell?
something like that. Yeah, the
some more
smell of the
sensory
body.
details.
yeah,
Yeah.
more
sensory.
senses
Yeah.
be great.
And not much. It doesn't need much at all. Because we do want to keep it tight and to the points, but just a touch more. I like it.
For me, I like the character. I liked the writing until the characters came, the kids came to meet the grandpa, and then I liked the pushback about like he said he was gonna be here, and I wanted that back and forth and the characterization to develop of the kids, so that it would hold me clear until they found the actual body. You know, maybe he's trying to hide it more. So from the time they entered the door until they found the body, I'd like to see more work done on that story to build the character of the kids, to make me feel, am I supposed to feel worried about them finding the body? Do I want them to find the body? I wasn't sure, and I think the author needs to decide how I'm supposed to feel about that.
I agree with that. I think for me, the what are we saying? More better if would be in the beginning describing more about why this old man is mean. Why did we go from that's a mean old guy to I must stab him? It's a big jump. And based on the voice of the narrator, the person sounds or the character sounds very young. So are we looking at like a 5-year-old murderer? Are we looking at a 15-year-old murderer? So maybe some kind of clue to tell us early on the age of the narrator and hints as to what this character did that was so awful to anger the narrator. Although that could be revealed later on as well.
And in that point, like Telltale Heart, right? And we're taking inspiration from Telltale Heart. The reason doesn't have to be big. And the reason doesn't have to even necessarily make sense. So Telltale Heart, he's got an eye. The guy just doesn't like his eye. He's like, oh, it looks this color and it's got a film and it reminds me of a vulture eye and I hate it and I'm going to kill him about it. Right? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it is very specific.
Yeah.
So, right, like, and so I think that's what Sarah's saying, right? Just a little bit of specificity.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't have to make sense, but that specificity might help.
As long as it makes sense to the character, that's all that matters.
I think it's super cool that you submitted to us, and thank you for letting us read your first page on
It was great.
So awesome.
Yeah, it was really good. And thank you for putting yourself out there. It's not easy. So, and it's great and we love it. So it's awesome. All right, who's reading the next one?
I'm happy to read mine. Okay. All right. Wait, I gotta find it. Okay, yep. What? A girl asked, entering the doorway. As soon as she asked that, the door slammed shut behind her. Thin, black, bark-like arms wrapped around her neck from behind and lifted her. Her face started to turn deathly white, and around her eyes were turning a bruised purple as the figure squeezed her neck tighter. The house was eerily quiet, and the only noise you could hear was choking and the struggle of breathing. A loud gasp was heard, and then a thud. The figure dropped her. When her breathing stopped, dead. The figure picked up her dead body and brought her into the room with a big cabinet. The dark figure opened it and brought her closer, the door slamming closed after. 2 years later. Wow, this is a nice house, Alice said. She went to look over the walls and the fireplace. Yes, with some new furniture and maybe a repaint. This house would be as good as new, the realtor said. You're right. I think I'll buy it, Alice said excitedly. She's been looking for the house near her new job as an investigator. It's been really hard to find one. Great. Should we go over the paperwork? The realtor asked. Of course, Alice said. They both walked over to the kitchen counter to fill everything out. But during the signing of the papers, the realtor asked Alice, this is a big house. Do you have, this is a big house. Do you have any family to live here with? Alex squirmed in her seat a bit. Every time she was applying for a house, everyone would ask the same question. No, I don't have anyone living with me. And I'm not necessarily close with my friends or family, Alice said solemnly. And that's the end of page 1.
Ooh, I want to know what's going to happen next.
I like
All
that
right.
we hear some history about Alice or hints at her past there, that she's sensitive about being asked about if she has any close relations. And so I'm a bet that this is going to be a paranormal story, paranormal horror. And what a great hook, because that's something that we see a lot of times with paranormal horror, is that somebody's been ostracized somehow, they're going through something, there's some kind of darkness in their life. And whether this person realizes it or not, that could be a big part of what attracts the spirits to them.
I'm betting this is a haunted house story, which I love haunted house stories.
I really liked some of the description early on, like the bark-like
Yeah.
arms,
Oh,
and
yeah.
how the cabinet was like made of wood. You got this feeling, but then the ghost had some kind of, or the dark figure, I should say, had some kind of connection to the cabinet itself in the description of the figure. I thought that was really advanced. I really appreciated that.
And I also, go ahead.
I was going to say, I really loved the verb choices. There are a lot of great verb choices, advanced verb choices, whether it was squeezing, slamming, really kind of next level ones that bring you into a story. So I appreciated that a lot.
Yeah. I also appreciated we got more senses in this one. We got sound in this one, which was great, in addition to just sight. I love this. A long gasp was heard and then a thud. That's
good.
real. Yeah. Good, short, simple, but you know, as the reader, exactly what happened. And it's enough to have you be like, oh my gosh. So really nice done. Nice use of short words to increase tension.
I like the time jump. I know that's kind of like a weird thing to say, but to see like a 2-year time jump on a first page is pretty cool. That tells us a lot about the house. So we're left to assume that the house has been kind of empty or it's been on the market for some time, as this realtor is trying to fill them in on what's going on. I would love to see where this story goes. Very curious about Alice and how the ghosts got there in the first place, or how this dark entity formed there in the first place.
What
Agreed.
even better if? What are our even better ifs here?
So one thing I would say is that houses are not usually determined that quickly, and the signing of papers and that type of thing, it's not usually done on the spot when you toured the house. I would maybe stretch that out. You don't need much to stretch that out. You don't even need the signing of the papers in this scene. You could just have like you know.
Would you like to put a bid on it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I guess that depends on what we don't know what happens on page 2. Page
True.
2 might
That's
make
very
that make
true.
sense. Yeah. For,
That
Yeah.
actually would be interesting. You know, that's and I'm so sorry, I'm gonna kind of jump in here and make some suggestions, but that would be really fascinating if Alice is like, wait, you had all the paperwork? And the realtor's like, yeah, sign.
Because they don't want you to know
Please.
about that it's
Yeah.
haunted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
please,
That'd be fun.
your bid's a little low, but that's fine.
Sign here.
Legally, though,
It's yours.
You do have to disclose legally that if a house is haunted or somebody died in it.
Legally.
Maybe she just
Legally, there was a yeah.
maybe someone just disappeared. They
I
don't
wonder
know
if
that
that's
person
true
died
in all
in it.
the states because we don't
That's
know
a.
what state
I'm
this
pretty
is.
sure that's a federal thing.
Or maybe they're gonna break the law.
Do our listeners know? Do you
Ooh,
have
tell
to
us if you
disclose?
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was a major case about that,
There, yeah. Yeah.
and the judge acknowledged that spirits beyond our understanding did exist.
That's cool.
It was really cool. So
That's going to be a hard one because it's based off of belief, and different people have different belief systems in there. Like, other people might say, no, I don't believe that spirits exist, therefore you shouldn't have to make a disclaimer on something that doesn't exist. Anyway, this is a side. This is going down a side rabbit hole. What were you about to say, Morgan?
I think the critique that Teresa put forth depends entirely on if the realtor is a major character in your novel.
Very true.
So
Very,
if
very
the
true.
realtor is going to either be related to the dark figure on the bad side, or going to be a love interest or a best friend, and we're going to see this realtor as a major player in the novel, then we definitely need more time with them and a little more personality. That would be my even better end. If we're not going to see the realtor again, maybe just start with them moving in and on the phone with somebody or something. But so I think really thinking about what's the realtor's role in the novel and how do I set that up on the first page would be my even better end to think about.
I'd also recommend just tweaking the dialogue a smidge. Wow, this is a nice house. Well, indeed, we all say that. That's the first thing we hear from our main character. Or we assume main character. There's not really much to suggest how old they are, and based on this, I would think they're fairly young. I mean, obviously old enough to be buying a house, but I just want some kind of hints in the dialogue or the interactions between them, whether detail or something. Again, just like how old is our main character? I don't care about what they look like or any of that kind of stuff. Just it helps us to kind of be grounded in the character, because this could be anywhere from 18, someone else is signing the check, tech millionaire, to somebody in their 60s.
I'm going to piggyback off yours a little bit. I think at least you need... I don't need a lot of grounding, but I think you need some grounding. So whether it's the age of the characters, are we geographically in the US, like where geographically are we? What season is it? What year is it ish? Like you don't necessarily have to have all of those all at once, but maybe one of those, or what time of day is it, or something like that. But like one of those at least might really help you feel like connected to that part of the story. And I think that's my even better if is I felt the first part of this story I felt so connected to, and it was so it drew me in so fast, and it was so visceral in a good way, right? Like not like in a gory way, but in like a tangible way. Like I felt like I could feel what was happening. I was there in the room, and really did a great use of like the little choices had a big impact. And then the second part, I didn't have that same immediacy feeling. I didn't feel like I was there with the characters. I kind of felt, I wanted that part to feel more real like the first part had. And I think part of it is that grounding that Sarah talked about is give me something to tie onto that makes me feel like I'm in this room with these people. That might help. But I mean, like I said, the first part was so good. I really, really loved that part.
Yeah, I did too.
Thank you so much for submitting. Yay. Hopefully you'll take some of our suggestions. They'll be helpful.
Or not,
Yeah.
it's your piece.
Or you're not,
Yeah.
or not? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Who do we have one more?
Do we have one more, or should we save that for next time? Since we're getting a little late in the stream.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah, I think let's save it for next time. And that's one of the wonderful things is if you're listening and you're like, oh shoot, they didn't read mine. No worries. No worries. We're gonna get to them. So keep submitting. And because we know how exciting it is to hear your works live. So or recorded, one of the two, however you're watching.
One or the other. All right.
Where can
Oh, go
they find how to submit to?
That's a great question.
They can go to semisagesofthepages.com. It is our website, and it has all the details about Culture Club, the topics we're going to be covering in the future, or at least over the next few months, and how they can submit. It has a link to the form. We do have an email address, but we ask that everyone follows the form so that we stay more organized. So that is where you can find a way to submit and hear your lovely work on this podcast.
Yay. Well, thank you. I loved that conversation. That was so much fun. I learned so much that I didn't know about Poe.
And Teresa, if they want to interact with us more, they want to have more engaging conversations with us, maybe inside or outside of the podcast, where can they go? How can they interact with us?
They can go to our Discord, Semi-Sages of the Pages. There was a lot of conversation happening today. We have, for those of you that don't know, we have a race to rejection. And there was a lot of chatter between our two top contenders because they got a lot of rejections today and they were both going back and forth with, I'm in the lead, no, I'm in the lead, no, I'm in the lead. Because one of the hardest things about getting published is putting your work out there. So we applaud our authors for putting their work out there, which means you will get rejections. And we want to celebrate that because, I mean, it's awesome.
It is. All right. Morgan or Sarah, final thing here. If they like us, what can they do to support us?
Give us money. No.
Write a check.
Just put it in an envelope and just put our names on it in the mail. It'll reach out.
They'll find it. They'll find
Yeah.
us.
Hit the like button. Yay.
Hit the like button.
Like,
5
subscribe.
stars.
It helps the algorithm.
It helps the
magic
algorithm.
of the
It actually
algorithm.
Share it
truly
with all your
does.
friends.
Share it with all our friends. All right. Who wants to wrap this sucker up?
Thank you guys so much for joining us here tonight. We really appreciate it. We would not be here without you. And have a great rest of your night.
Enjoy reading Poe.
Bye. And we are out.
All right.
Woo!
Oh, Molly, you did fantastic.
I am so sorry, guys. I'm so
don't
sorry.
be-
It's fine.
Don't be.
It's okay.
You did fine. It's not a big deal.
You
Whew.
kicked butt.
I think that was a good one, though. That was fun.
Mhm.
Sarah,
was
you
fun.
had so
It's
many
always
Poe
fun.
facts.
I
I've
literally
learned so
just
much.
thought about it. Oh, I know. I've been spending the last week talking about him, so I was like, I'm ready for this.
Oh, that's awesome.